Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the February user group. Great to have you with us. I saw Dan, that was a late registration, so welcome. Glad you could make it. And Robert, I think this is your first webinar, so great to have you with us. But today we've got quite a bit to get through, so let's get started. And we've got opportunity for Q&A as well, so please have questions ready. So on today's webinar, we're going to cover the following 5 points. The first one, with our nautical theme. Oracle has a major event on this weekend. I think it's Friday and Saturday with the Sail GP competition here in Sydney. So Sydney is the latest city to host this global yachting event. So we thought we'd run with a bit of a nautical theme for you. Hopefully you like the images. All right, so first one, calibrating and understanding the data, a key aspect of everything we do from a digital marketing point of view. So we'll focus on that. We'll also look at this concept of sailing without instruments and whether or not that's a good idea. So we'll take some time to look at that. Using real-time data and insights, letting you change direction potentially, is also a good strategy. You might call that optimization. We'll then also look at some analysis and review, and then finally wrap up just to revisit some of the key updates that took place with the 20A release, which was on Valentine's Day in February. We also have something else we wanted to show you today, which is a little bit of an Eloqua hack, and we'll get to that towards the end of the session. But my name is Derek Bell. I'm the Director of Customer Success and Marketing at Marketing Cube, and my colleague Jason O'Donnell, one of our account directors, is also on the line, and Jason will be helping me manage the chat function. So please, if you do have questions throughout the webinar, please make sure that you use that chat function, and we'll get to those as quickly as we possibly can. Now, at the point of registration, we also provide you with the chance to submit some questions, and one from Erica in South Australia, and she's looking at just getting the best out of reports for events. And Erica, yes, absolutely. There's a range of ways that you can look at that data. Possibly the form submission data is probably one of the easiest and quickest ways to do that. You can go to the form at any particular point and just simply export that data, or you could create an agent in Insight. And an agent is a way for you to create a subscription, more or less, for a given report. And you could then have that form submission data emailed to you on a regular basis. The next step to go from event reporting point of view is potentially to look at utilizing the dashboards that are available within Insight. And the best way to do that is to, first of all, I find often the easiest way to do this is grab a piece of A3 paper and start to draw out what you would like that dashboard to look like. If you can take a moment to do that and have a chat with your colleagues, then we can potentially help you build that type of a dashboard within Insight. The other way to look at it is to also think about that data being synchronized through to your CRM platform. So keeping in mind the integration can be updated at any point. So additional data delivered to the CRM could also deliver dashboards within the CRM, which is possibly a slightly better place for that dashboard to be, because it's more than likely you're looking to build those dashboard reports for people outside of the marketing team. They typically won't have access to Eloqua, but they will have access to the CRM platform. So that's something to consider as well. Another question we had in relation to contact management was from Alicia in Melbourne. She says, how do you pull a report outlining who in your contact segment has clicked a link from a campaign? Great question. So there is a specific report that you can extract, which is called an email click-through link breakdown report. So what that enables you to do is take the particular email in question and then do a review of the links that were clicked. You can also select multiple emails. So if there are multiple emails in the campaign, you could extract them completely. So what does that look like? Well, first of all, let's understand what's contained in that particular report. So what it does essentially is it tracks any activity for tracked links. And by default, all of your links in Eloqua are tracked. If you have external links, that is a link that is not an Eloqua landing page or a link that is not on your website. So you might be linking to an article in the Sydney Morning Herald or the Melbourne Age or something like that, then you want to make sure that you tick the box to ensure that particular link is tracked. So emphasis there, activity for tracked links. Once you extract that report, this is what it looks like. So what it does, it presents to you the name of the email on the left-hand side. It then actually shows you the complete link in question, and it shows you total click-throughs and also unique click-throughs. Now, I'm hoping you can see on the screen there under total click-throughs, the number 48 and the number 2 are actually blue, which means they're hyperlinks. So what you do then is simply click on the 48, follow the next steps, and that will then reveal the who has actually clicked through on those relevant links. Now, another way you could do this is to go into segments and create a segment. Not that the segment will ever end up on a campaign necessarily, but you could also load in a filter within the segment criteria, identifying that particular link and everybody that was sent that particular email. You want to narrow it down, and that will give you the results. Funnily enough, that particular click-through report you're looking at is for the confirmation email for this month's email group. And you'll notice that the big link that everyone clicked on, I think I pulled this picture mid last week, we had 21 people click on the add to calendar function. So that's great news. I can see that people are obviously using that function and using that function to add the webinar to their calendars. So you're here on time and don't forget. So thanks for doing that. So hopefully, Alicia, that answers your question. If not, give us a buzz and we'll be happy to walk you through that in more detail. Then another question was, can we do conditional form fields, i.e. based on earlier fields in Eloqua, from Winnie in Melbourne also. So Winnie, the answer to your question is yes, but it does require a little JavaScript and CSS magic. So to give you an example, when you registered for the user group this month and also last month, we ask if you'd like an SMS reminder. And if you say yes, then we expose the mobile phone field for you to provide us with your mobile phone number. So what's happened there is that our developers have written some JavaScript and some CSS. We just have that simply hardwired into the form template. So I don't actually have to play with the JavaScript or the CSS every month or every time I want to use that particular form. I just simply use my template and everything's contained within it. So that JavaScript and CSS works in concert with the landing page. So there's also additional content. The CSS and JavaScript are both on the landing page. It's a pretty simple process. We just need to identify what it is you'd like to do. I mean, other examples are when we ask people which country they're in, if they identify as being in Australia, then we'll expose the Australian state and territories for people to advise which state or territory they're in. Not all of our forms do that, but most of our forms do that. You can pick and choose should you want to. If that's something you'd like to explore in a bit more detail, the support team at Marketing Cube can assist you with that. All right, let's get into our key topics. So following our nautical theme for the SailGP event this year, we really wanted to milk it as much as we could from the point of view of analogies. So some of you may or may not be aware, but Adrian Jones, our CEO, is a budding sailor. He's actually done the Melbourne to Hobart, so not Melbourne to Hobart, would you believe the Sydney to Hobart Boxing Day yacht race, and it was a huge blast. We all had a great time following him on that. But he's helped us put together some of these analogies to help us try and draw some principles across. So you can see here, professional sailors spend hours understanding data that is shared through boat instrumentation and onto custom wristwatches, and all of that stuff helps them with strategy and trimming. Trimming, I understand, is about trimming time, essentially. So calibrating that data and understanding what they mean is critical. So example is the depth from the instrument, the waterline or the bottom of the keel. All of that information is flown through to digital devices that the guys wear on their wrists, information on the boats, etc. It's quite extraordinary, the amount of technology that they go through or utilize. So what sort of information do we have available to help ourselves in relation to what we're doing? So what reports and measurements are important to your campaign? What does the data actually mean? Do you have standard reports set up to quickly group campaigns? Let's pull those apart in a bit more detail. So reports and measurements are really important at the beginning of the campaign. And you may holistically set up goals and ideas and principles at the beginning of your year to determine what the year is going to look like and what success would potentially look like for you as you run your different campaigns. So once you understand what those are, then it's a matter of locating the right reports that can help you do that. Now, of course, there's 200 plus insight reports that can help you do that. And then you can, if you need to, you can then modify those insight reports using the analyzer license. And usually that's the BI type person within your organization that can help you then manipulate those reports to what you actually need. So once you've got access to that data and you're looking at it, what does it actually mean? So that answer to that question is probably going to be a little bit different for everybody, because it will mean slightly different things for slightly different organizations. For us at Marketing Cube, we take fairly regular, or pay fairly regular attention to the data. We look at the dashboards, and we also have some regular insight reports that are delivered as well. That in concert with things like lead scoring, which is not a report per se, but it's certainly the culmination of lots of data points that can come together to produce that lead score, which can help you get an idea of engagement and also profile of those various people. Now, do you have some standard reports that you can quickly either group campaigns or analyze those campaigns? Now, we'll talk a little bit more in a moment around dashboards and some of what you can set up as compulsory fields within a campaign, which can then help you get the granularity that you need to probably answer that third bullet point in a bit more detail. But let's have a closer look. And I suppose just to recap for you, when you're looking at insight, and if you do have insight questions, I'd encourage you to go back to the January user group, because we did dive into insight in quite a bit of detail, and you'll find the link to that replay on our blog, just at marketingcube.com.au/blog. You'll find it right there. So please access that if you're looking for a bit more information and some practical tips on how to use insight. But let's have a look at dashboards. These are the dashboards contained within Eloqua, so these are not the insight dashboards. So on the left-hand side, this is actually Marketing Cube's dashboard that you can see. And so what we've done here is we've broken down the different types of campaigns that we run. This is not all of them, but it's certainly some of them. What I've done here is select a time frame for this particular report and identified the particular types of campaigns that I wanted to focus on. Now, these values are applied at the campaign before the campaign is activated, and that information then flows through to the dashboards. Now, when you look at dashboards, if what you see is on the right-hand side of the screen, not with a large red cross through it, but just a big single blue box called uncategorized, then they're really not delivering any value for you. All you're getting is a total number, in this example, almost 80,000 emails and campaigns. That's it. So if you want the granularity on the left-hand side, let me show you how you actually do that. So looking at a campaign canvas, the application of those campaign fields is found in the options menu. From the options menu, you then select campaign fields. And when campaign fields opens, you'll see a pop-up window. And there are three values that you can apply. There's product, region, and campaign type. Now, you can see the little asterisks that we've positioned next to those three values. That means that those fields are actually required, and we can't launch a campaign until those values are assigned. Now, what we've elected to do, and I would encourage you to do the same, is to make those drop-down single select pick lists. They can only be single select pick lists, which is important to consider, and make those required right across your organization. You can't pick and choose which users do or do not have to assign these. Once you make them required, every user across your entire instance must apply these three values to your campaigns. So where does that information flow through to? Well, it flows through to that graph I showed you just a moment ago. But if we actually have a look at the full campaign analysis overview dashboard, you'll see exactly where that information sits. And so now what we have is a much better view as to overall activity, and simply not just one big blue box sitting there, which gives us absolutely nothing. So this is a huge place to start. It doesn't take long. Literally, the configuration to achieve this will take no more than 10 minutes. It's the thinking behind it that will probably take quite a bit more time. So in this particular campaign analysis overview dashboard, you can see performance on the right. All the campaigns talked about in outbound and inbound activity. Outbound is what you're pushing out. Inbound is people clicking, downloading, submitting forms, visiting web pages, et cetera, And then below that, you'll see a complete breakdown of all of the campaigns that make up the data that you're looking above at the dashboards. So the names of the campaigns you can see sitting in the center of the screen there in blue, and then they're hyperlinked. So I can then click on those and click through to get more detail about one particular campaign versus a grouping of all campaigns over a set period. So much higher level of insight and granularity in relation to campaign performance, and adding far greater value to what you're trying to look at within your campaigns. So how do we configure those dashboards? I suppose one of the key questions is, how does the business want to see campaign data reported? There's no point going blind in there and going, making things up, etc. It's much better to think about how the business needs to view those reports and what value they're going to offer. Now, keep in mind that reports, those dashboards that you see right there or just a moment ago, those dashboards are only available to Eloqua users. So you can be a little bit selfish and have more of a marketing twist on these things, but that information is easily exported as well. You can export those dashboards with a single click and grab a PNG file. So if you do need to take data and drop it into presentations for the wider business, then you obviously want to try and configure these to make your life a little bit easier when it comes to those other reports. So the three values, campaign type, product, and region, those names can't be changed. However, you can add whatever values you want to them. They're just single select pick lists like you would add to a form. So the way you build your pick list for a form is exactly the same way that you build a pick list for those three values. Now, at the campaign level, there is also an option for you to add custom fields. And these are really brilliantly numbered out of the box, I think 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you can rename those fields to contain more valuable information. You might have unique campaign IDs, potentially from the CRM platform, or other information that would be helpful when you access insight reports. So just to be clear, custom fields are only available to be viewed in Insight. They're not viewed within the Eloqua dashboards. Okay, let's have a look at a bit more detail, because the next logical question that people ask is, well, what sort of campaign, what values would I put in there? Here's some examples. So we're talking maybe digital advertising. You might be using the Facebook or LinkedIn lead connectors that bring your paid advertising from those two avenues directly into the campaign canvas. You might be running some advertising using Google, for instance, and so you want to drive people to a form, an Eloqua landing page and form, and so that would then become part of a canvas, and that could be your campaign type. Events is obviously a big one, newsletters, lead generation versus lead nurture, and then maybe administration, because not every campaign you run is potentially a marketing campaign. There may be company communications that need to go out that are not of a marketing nature, but information that you need to get out to people. So it's always good to have a value that you can assign, because remember that that list is a single select pick list. The next one down is product, and then we have region. So product will differ for everybody, obviously, and there's really no examples I can give you per se, but one encouragement I would give you is looking at grouping products at a higher level, more so than trying to list every conceivable product that you sell. Because you need to remember, again, it is a single select pick list. So in the context of a campaign, unless you regularly run campaigns that focus on a single product or service, then there's probably more value in looking at applying values that are at product group levels versus individual SKUs or individual products. Now, region. So region obviously is for geographical data. However, whatever you want, you can put in there. And the reason I say that is that for our North American and say European friends, when they're running campaigns, it's likely that they do potentially run them in regions. They may run them in specific countries in Europe if there's multiple language requirements. And the US typically focuses very much on an East Coast, West Coast, North, South, or Central type of mentality when it comes to sales and marketing, largely because of the size of their populations. In Australia and New Zealand, we really don't have that. And it's very few of us, I think, that really run campaigns that would only be targeted to New South Wales, or only be targeted to South Australia, or just to the South Island of New Zealand, for example. However, if you do, well, obviously you could use region to use that as another variable in your dashboard. However, if it's not, well, then it's completely up to you as to what other value is important to you that you might add. And so again, just to emphasize, the custom fields don't appear on the Eloqua dashboards, but they are available through various Insight reports and also any dashboards that you build in Insight. keeping in mind again that Insight dashboards are different to the Eloqua dashboards that you can access from within Eloqua itself. So to give you a bit of an example in a bit more detail, what I thought I'd do is show you what we do at Marketing Cube. So for us, campaign type, you can see we've got those listed there. Product, we've actually elected to use product. You'll notice also that we also have non-product related, because there are campaigns that we will run from time to time, probably the administration type of campaigns that are not product related. So I don't want to trash the data that we get in those dashboards by having to assign a value that's not really relevant. So hence non-product related is a good value to have as well. And then region, for us at Marketing Cube, that's how we kind of break down the world in relation to different geographies that we communicate with from time to time. And then at the bottom, you'll notice we have global. And global, for instance, the user group is global because we have people from everywhere joining the user group. So from that point of view, it just makes sense to assign a value of global. Okay, the primary fields are single select pick list. These are some things for you to just consider as you start to think through the values that you want to flesh out. So keeping in mind again that they are single select pick lists. Now, once you add the values and make them required, your dashboards will begin to come to life. That's the exciting part. The only thing is you can't assign these to historical campaigns. So the sooner you make some decisions and the sooner you get these pick lists built and make those fields required on the campaign canvas, the sooner you'll be able to access more insight. So do we have any questions at all about that process and helping dashboards to be more valuable within your organization? We've got Jason on the line there. So if you do have any questions, just use the chat function and we'll get onto those for you. So the next step, sailing without instruments, is a really good idea. I tried to find a boat that I assumed had no instruments, and I think that boat possibly has no instruments, but that looks like a lot of fun. We see loads of these on Sydney Harbour, a fairly regular basis, usually filled with kids sailing madly around the harbour trying to avoid cruise ships. So the key thing with SailGP, and this is something to consider, is that all of the yachts are actually identical. I suppose it's a little bit like Formula One racing. So the difference really comes down to the skill of the sailors and how well the sailors are able to maneuver their boat and approach the finish line the quickest as possible. So what you're able to do when you're sailing without instruments is to evaluate, I suppose, your own performance as an individual, but we do have information available to make this process a lot better. So unlike the poor sailor who's left to his or her own devices to get to the finish line as quickly as possible, we can make smarter decisions. And so not using the data would be the same as going back to sailing without instruments. And you do have instruments to guide you. That's the important thing. So the key instruments that you've got to help you evaluate your campaign performance are dashboards. Hence the deep dive there a few moments ago into dashboards and getting those configured as quickly as possible so that you can really start to get some insight and some value from those dashboards. Have you considered creating agents? So we mentioned earlier that agents is a construct within Insight that essentially creates a subscription. You set up an Insight agent, you then assign potentially days of the week that you want to receive the report. You can receive it as an Excel file. It'll be attached to the email when it arrives in your inbox. You can obviously select the report that you want. So you select a particular report, select a start date for when that subscription or the agent begins, and then also an end date. Make sure you assign an end date, otherwise people will be receiving these reports for the next 30 years. So yeah, not the best outcome. The other thing that I'd really encourage you to do is to go into Insight and actually just have a look at the reports that are available. You'll find a brief description under each of those reports telling you exactly what they do, and then just run the reports. The nice thing is there's no Flash anymore. So for those of you that were having issues with Flash every time, that pain has gone away, which is nice. And then consider also pushing data from Eloqua back into your CRM. This can be a really valuable concept, and we mentioned this a little bit earlier, I think, with one of the questions that was raised, that there's a load of data sitting in Eloqua that, when pushed back to your CRM through using the integration, can enable you then to take advantage of the report and dashboard functionality within the CRM. We do this at Marketing Cube. We have a number of reports that sit in our CRM platform that help us focus on things like the user group, specific form submissions, and some of that actually is able to be done just based on the standard integration, because what we do, all of those activities come into the CRM and are sitting against each individual with an activity, and that activity has a unique name. And so by taking that activity value within the CRM, we can then build dashboards and different org reports and then dashboards with that information. The other upside to having some of those dashboards sitting in the CRM platform is that that's largely where the sales team are. So the sales team, again, are really probably not going to have access to Eloqua, nor really have the desire to want to learn to navigate a new platform. Just let them have fun in the CRM, and then try and spoon feed them, I suppose, with some of the information that's going to add some value to what they're doing, but also communicate the value that marketing is bringing to that whole process as well. So you don't have to sail without instruments. We have loads of instruments to help you, and there are loads of different locations that information can become available. So the next step is, once we're looking at all of this information, it's about using that real-time data and insight. A couple of years ago, Adrian, our CEO, was at the Oracle event in California, Open World, and he, of course, was attracted to the Sail GP folks, because Oracle sponsor a boat. And what they were showcasing was a lot of the technology that is used, which Oracle obviously does a lot of work with the various teams on that type of technology. So with that technology, what can we do with it? Now, we have a lot of data available to us and a lot of data that we can play with. Let's have a look. I just want to give you an example of where we utilize some data to actually drive a campaign outcome. So we have a campaign coming up with Oracle, or it's an event here in Sydney at the end of March. And so really the primary target from a geographical point of view would be those people in New South Wales. Specifically from our point of view, that are prospects. So they're not yet customers of Marketing Cube, or in some cases not customers of Oracle as yet. And they're not using Eloqua. So that was the key value that we need to look at. So when we did all our slicing and dicing, we ended up with about 1,300 people that met that criteria. We then wanted to apply a bunch of other exclusions. And going through that process, we were left with 582 unique individuals. So what I'm looking at now is the segment, essentially. I'm in the segment, I've applied the filters, and the next step is to click on the button called View Contacts, and actually now have a look at those 582 unique people. Now, I appreciate some of you are running campaigns where you could have hundreds of thousands of people. So it might be easier to export some of that out to Excel to have a look in a bit more detail and apply some filters and interrogate that data a bit further. So we could have just simply taken that 582, built out a single email, and Shazam, shot the email out the door. But when we looked at the data, we noticed that there was some logical groupings of people, primarily based on industry, that would mean the way we pitch the event to them, based on their industry, would be a little bit different. So what we've done is we've built some dynamic content, and also utilizing field merges to actually personalize that campaign in quite a bit more detail. So great example of being able to look at our own data, understand what's in front of us, and then look at how we could tailor the message accordingly. And honestly, I find that this is where dynamic content often comes into play. When we sit down and design the campaign, we typically have a standard process that we're going to follow to try and get people to an event, get bums on seats, so to speak. But what we want to do is improve our chances of having a message that's going to resonate with those people. And so when we saw in the data a very clear breakdown of different industries, for instance, we had not-for-profit folks in there, we had banking and finance, we had manufacturing, and the event, in the context of the event, why those various groups might attend and their motivations would be quite different. And I suppose this very easily sort of slips a little bit into the idea of personas as well, and also understanding the journey that our customers or prospects are on in order to become a customer. So You might have noticed the language we used when you registered. We talked about a slight trim or a quick tack at the right time can completely change the outcome. And so this becomes a process of optimization. So again, using that real-time data to potentially change the outcome of the campaign. So just some tips for you to remember when you're looking at your campaign. Once you activate the campaign, it's not really finished, right? Yes, it's automation and you could leave it if you wanted to, but you would be far better spent giving a little bit of time to analyzing the campaign as it's in motion. So segments can be dynamic. Remember, you can add people to a campaign even once it's added. An event is a perfect example. Nurturing campaigns are logically constantly having people come into them. Assets can also be edited while a campaign is live. That includes emails, landing pages, and forms. So you'll notice, you might have done this yourself, you've been looking at an email, it says active up in the top left-hand corner. And so active, that little green button, tells you that that particular asset is currently on a campaign canvas and is in play. If you do make any changes, sometimes it might be as little as finding a typo and correcting a typo. You'll get a message from Eloqua saying, hey, hang on a minute, do you want to save this because it's part of a live campaign? Just say yes, and you're good to go. So if it's only slight changes, that could be one approach to do. If you actually want to completely swap out an email from an optimization point of view, you can also do that. You will need to pause or deactivate the campaign canvas, swap out your asset, and then reactivate the canvas. There's no harm in doing that. And then that will help you move through the process. But you're only going to do that based on observations of the data and looking at what's working and what's not working. Optimization, right? So one of the things that can potentially help you with that is the email performance dashboard. So the email performance dashboard, you'll know as you click through there on the third tab that you can actually see the click map and you can see exactly what people are actually clicking on. So has a button potentially been placed in a wrong position? Is it just not getting enough clicks? Would it be better to have two buttons, one at the top of the email and one potentially at the bottom of the email? Things like that. So you can make those changes. And some of those changes, as I said, if you're just going to change an individual email versus swap it out completely, you don't have to deactivate the canvas. You can simply make those changes on the fly as needed. A form submission data is another good example. So if you're, depending on the nature of the campaign, it could be providing people access to thought leadership, it could be registering for an event. Are you in fact getting the right questions to the answers that you need? Or has a question potentially been configured in such a way that you're getting the wrong type of responses? Maybe the question was poorly worded, etc. Could be a little bit optimized. Again, you can make those changes on the form while the campaign is live. As soon as you make those changes, save the form, you'll get that standard message, hey, hang on a minute, this is live, you sure you want to do it? Yes is the answer, and then those changes will flow immediately through to your landing page. So that process of optimization, don't think of it necessarily as something that can only be done once the campaign is complete. It's something that you can access, that real-time data you can access while the campaign is in fact in motion. Which then brings us to the next step, which is the analysis and review process. So we now look at post-campaign. So yes, and that's why I thought, so the nice sailing boat there heading off into the sunset. So after each race, the teams will view incidents, the race performance with multiple cameras and all the data that is available to look for opportunities to learn and improve. I remember years ago, I think it was after it was my high school exams. My mum sent me off, it was the 80s, right? So my mum sent me off to these flotation chambers where you lie down in this like water, it's just covered in salt, just filled with salt, and you just float there and nothing. It's very relaxing. And I remember the girl was telling me that they use them at the Australian Institute of Sport, but what they do is actually have a television sitting there at the top of the box. So while you're lying down, you're looking directly up at a television screen. And what the elite athletes would do is actually watch themselves running, swimming, jumping, whatever the sport they were in, and just that time to sort of zone out and really focus on what it is they're doing, looking at their style, looking at their technique, etc., and finding opportunities to improve in what they're doing. So we don't have to necessarily lie in flotation tanks to do some post-campaign analysis. But let me give you an example of where we did some post-campaign analysis and discovered an opportunity that's actually paid off really well for us. So There are lots of things you can do, lots of resources available to help you. We've talked about dashboards, we've looked at insight, we've looked at form submission data and click-through reports. There's a whole range of things. But we added a call to action at the bottom of an email. This was our important update email. So this is where we take the release information that Oracle's coming up with. We then filter through it, kind of find what we believe are the most important points. And then we have a very specific subscription. So the only people that get this email are those who have actually subscribed to receive it. And it's available obviously to our customers and to anyone that's using Eloqua. You're welcome to subscribe to that. But we noticed while looking at the insight reports that there was a high percentage, higher than usual percentage of people actually forwarding the email. And I suppose that kind of made sense that, you know, if someone subscribed to it, then they, oh, gee, my colleague might be interested in this change or this update that's coming, etc. So you'll see that huge black box at the bottom of the email, right down by the footer, simply with the question, did someone forward you this email? Subscribe today. So the most recent email went out in the beginning of February, I think it was, in the first week of February. Since that email went out through until I think I checked yesterday, I think we've had nearly 25 people subscribe. So 25 net new additions to our subscription for that particular service. And that's fantastic from our point of view. It's a mix of customers, but it's also a mix of prospects. So that gives us a chance to convey our expertise to people who are maybe not Marketing Cube customers yet. They're clearly Eloqua customers, but gives us a chance to say hello and to share with them some of our expertise and tips, etc. So this is one example. Now, another thing to look at from an analysis point of view is to create some type of a benchmark. There's always a big focus on, oh, how do we compare with everybody else? You know, some of you that have been using Eloqua for a long time will remember the old industry benchmark reports that were available in Insight. I have it on reasonable, no, I have it on good authority that Eloqua is actually working to restore that functionality or that type of reporting. I don't know when, but I believe it is a process. So in the interim, what we can do is focus on our own data. So in this particular example, what we've done is taken our own stats across 2019. So from 1st of January to 31 December, and looked at the total across every single campaign that we ran. Now, you could look at that and go, oh, okay, well, that's okay. It could be better, et cetera, et cetera. But we also run a lot of really different campaigns to really different audiences. Let me show you as an example. So these stats that are appearing on the screen right now, these relate only to the Eloqua user group. So you can see, for instance, the unique open rate is, well, you can say it's massively different to the overall average. So the reason I point this out to you is that don't get stuck simply looking at averages across every single campaign you run. Because like us, I'm sure you also communicate with very different groups of people. So using email groups as a line in the sand or a demarcation point is probably a really good way to do it. So this is just simply, I've pulled the report directly from the campaign analysis overview report. To that, I've added the campaign type, product and region columns data, so that's available. And then just filtered it down and focused just purely on the user group as an example. So when someone says to you, well, how did that campaign compare? Well, compare with what would be my first question. And the best response, I think, to that is compare to other similar campaigns that we've run. So just a very, hopefully a strong visual to help you realize that you should break down your benchmarks and not just simply focus on overall averages across every single campaign that you send. Then from a focus point of view, at a post-event, there'll be all sorts of metrics that you have as an organization. These are just some ideas for you to think about following your events. So, or sorry, your campaigns. So do we have net new contacts, i.e. are there new leads that have come into the system? Are any of those marketing qualified? Could they be passed through to sales, and have they been passed through to sales? And do we have the integration set up to automatically send those through to the sales team? If you do create your benchmark, well, then you can benchmark that current campaign against the averages across campaigns of a similar type, for example. And then for those people who are in that particular campaign, what happens next? Is this just a single event, a single experience, or is it part of a journey that you're trying to take those people on? Of course, using automation is the key step here, and maximizing that, and probably thinking that question through before the campaign goes live is also another good tip. Now, are there aspects of the campaign that you could potentially recycle? Are there assets that you've used, or was a particular flow on the campaign of significant value that you felt maybe we should try this again? There's no point just simply doing the same thing that you've always done again and again and again. Try something different. You never know what might happen. That bar we added to the bottom of that email, encouraging people to subscribe to the important updates service. That covers everything that we had on the agenda, except for the hack that I wanted to show you here in just a moment. Are there any questions at all in relation to any of those points that we've raised so far? If you do have any questions, go ahead and use the chat function and the guys will bring that to my attention. All right, let's move on. Okay. So of course I do a search for hack, and the only images I find are of males, but I'm sure there are plenty of females out there doing their own fair share of hacking as well. So the key hack that I wanted to show you here today is, if you're using dynamic content and shared content on a regular basis, you'll know that the editor is still the old editor. It hasn't been updated yet. It is on the roadmap and it is coming. But what we wanted to do was show you how you could use a new feature that's in controlled availability that you need to request from Oracle to gain access to. But here, let me show you. But let's focus first of all on dynamic content. The principles are much the same with shared content from a build point of view, but dynamic content is different because it's conditional. So you can create lots of alternate versions of content for a particular asset, so an email or a landing page. You'll go through the process of setting criteria, and that's where you determine which version goes to which person. So the way dynamic content works is that it's driven by information from the contact, hence the screenshot there for you to have a look at the contact. So once you build out your dynamic content, you can reference information from the contact, also from custom objects as well. So there's two ways that you can do that. But essentially what it means is, by playing with dynamic content, instead of building out potentially 5 different emails, you could build out one email and have a single piece or section within that email that is in fact dynamic and will be presented to people based on information stored on their contact. So if you think back to my example earlier, we talked about the different industries that we identified. And so that's why we built the dynamic content with industry in mind. But let's get the basics down. So if we take a look at any email that you build in Eloqua today, it has a header and it also has a footer, and there's the email body. And it's in this email body that you start to drag in using the design editor. So no HTML, we're using the design editor for this example. You'll bring in layout components, and those layout components might be an image, for example, and that's usually your hero image of some sort. Then you may drop in a piece of content for text, so that's where your copy, etc. resides, and then at the bottom, a button, as you can tell, very basic email. Now, if we wanted to take advantage of dynamic content, we obviously have to go off to the dynamic content editor and start to build it. But we know that that build experience is very different to building emails here in the design editor. So if we bring in some dynamic content, so we're going to get rid of that layout content piece with just text and drop in dynamic content. So dynamic content must always have a default, and the default is there just in case a particular recipient doesn't meet any of the rules that you've created. So if you think about our one for industry, I'm trying to remember, I think we had media industry, we had manufacturing industry, we had not-for-profit industry, banking and finance industry, etc. So I think in total we maybe had 5 or 6 separate industries where we've altered the copy and also the imagery that goes along with that. So then you'll keep adding different versions. And so we build the dynamic content elsewhere. But let me show you the hack. Okay. So the hack is that instead of building the dynamic content within the dynamic content editor, we're actually going to build it directly within the editor, the design editor itself. So you can see here, this email is looking very empty. There's no header, there's no footer, because all we're doing is building that single piece that you see right in front of you on the screen. Now, once you've built that particular piece, you then need to go to the Actions menu and access a function called Export HTML. Now, again, to reiterate, if you don't see that in your menu, it means that you need to request from Oracle to have that available. It's currently in controlled availability, so I'd encourage you to get onto it as quickly as possible. They eventually get to a point where they usually stop controlled availability. I don't know how many, I don't know what the numbers are, but easy enough to do. We did it and we had access within 24 hours. In fact, I think we had access within 12 hours. So they get onto that stuff pretty quickly. All you need to do is ask for the ability to export HTML from emails and landing pages, and it gets activated for you. Okay. If you're an Eloqua, sorry, if you're a Marketing Cube customer, we can do this on your behalf as well. So please drop us a note. Just send us support@marketingcube.com.au, and the guys and girls can get that taken care of for you. All right, so let's move forward. We now click on Export HTML. We then see this pop-up window with all this yucky HTML. So you'll see there's even a button there, copy to clipboard. That's nice and easy, so we can copy to clipboard. And then from there, we need to now go over to dynamic content. So either another tab or heading off to dynamic content. And so when you arrive in dynamic content, it looks very empty, and we're focusing just on the default rule at the moment. So you get there, you click on full, which is in the content area. Once you get in there, you then want to click on the SRC, which is the source area. And when you click on the source area, your screen turns black, and now you do Control V on your keyboard to paste, and Shazam, you've now added the HTML from the email design editor directly into your dynamic content. And so then it looks like this. So you can see it sitting there. It's got the shading and everything that will match beautifully with the email that you're going to be building. And over here on the left-hand side, you can see those different industries, etc. So as an example, if we look at, say, manufacturing, you can see we've swapped out the image in this particular case. And the rule is actually very simple. From our point of view, we use manufacturing, which is identified on the contact, and it's simply manufacturing. So that's it. And so you'll see there's different images set for different industries, etc., with slightly different wording involved with those as well. And so that's how you can go about creating some dynamic content, making sure that the look and feel is identical. So there have been folks that I've spoken to in the last few weeks or last couple of months who are building dynamic content. They're like, well, it doesn't quite look the same. I can't get the button to be the same. We've done a little bit of work with HTML. We're close, but it's just not quite the same, etc. This removes all of that guesswork for you. And obviously working from templates will make your life a lot easier as well, because you'll have continuity in the layout and the look and feel. So question from Dan in New Zealand. Dan says, does the content maintain its responsive rules? It absolutely does, Dan, and that's why I'm so excited to do it. That's the absolute key thing, because today when you build content in the dynamic content editor or the shared content editor, it's not responsive by default. It's mobile friendly, but it's not responsive like the design editor. So yes, absolutely. The experience is seamless, which is beautiful. I personally am now diving a lot deeper into building a lot more dynamic content and to deliver a lot more personalization. So at the end of the year, I'm told it is on the roadmap that the dynamic content editors and the shared content editor are being rebuilt so that you'll have the same experience being able to build natively here responsive content as you do today in the design editor for email and landing pages. So this hack is a temporary thing, but for those who want to take advantage and more easily take advantage of dynamic content without the need of having to call on some HTML experts, this is a much easier solution. So hopefully that is helpful. Alrighty, so to finish off, we're really just going to recap on some of the things from the 20A release that came through in February on Valentine's Day. One of the big changes that we had there is the fact that Flash is no longer necessary. So you'll find details in the Help Center in relation to Chrome versions, etc. that you need, but we're all HTML5 friendly now from an Insight report. So you won't get that annoying little message having to permit Flash when you're pulling Insight reports. Some other changes, just in a little bit more detail. We didn't have this much detail during the user group last month. Changes to the Facebook lead ads app. Specifically, you'll see 3 bullet points there, which give you a little bit more information that you can now pull through from the app. So that's good news. So conditional questions and multi-page Facebook forms, etc., are now all able to be brought through on the app as well. There are also some updates, and I apologize for the massive amount of text here, but for those clients who are using Salesforce CRM integrated to Eloqua, there are some changes here in relation to the way activity information is exported and viewed through the integration app. If you're the administrator within your organization, I'd encourage you to pick up the phone and have a chat with Marketing Cube, or to have a look through the Help Center. If you go into Top Liners, you'll find more information around the release, and you'll find more detail like you've got on the screen here as well. So hopefully that is of benefit. For those customers using Oracle Sales Cloud, the integration app has also been updated with similar functionality that you just saw that was enhanced with Salesforce as well. So that information, again, if you're using Oracle Sales Cloud along with Eloqua, then this will be helpful information to you. Again, the support team can assist you should you need it. The other big change that came through that is active now for everybody is the account engagement dashboard. So this is the very beginning. I think I was speaking with one of the Oracle product managers the other week, and he said to me, this is the baby step. So this is just the very beginning of this type of account level information being available. And so what this does essentially, and actually we had a really funny experience. We came into the office, well, actually I'm a geek and I did look at the dashboard on Saturday night because that's what I do. But on Monday when we got to the office, there was a particular account that we've been working with and been stalking is an affectionate term, but yeah. And the account dashboard just showed that that account was so highly engaged. And we had a little bit of a chuckle. We're like, okay, this is good. Let's have a closer look at this dashboard and see which other accounts are very highly engaged. So yeah, great information. And as Oracle have said, or Eloqua have said, this is just the beginning. There's more account level type of information like this coming to really drive home the account-based marketing that many of us are looking to do and are working on at the moment. The other thing for you to be aware of, and you're probably experiencing it right now, is the partial sunsetting of the classic form editor. So the key thing to understand is your old forms done in the classic editor will still function. That's okay, but you're limited now in relation to editing of those to a degree. You used to be able to take the old forms and do a save as, and that would then magically create the new form. That function has now gone away. If you're wondering what's happening from a scheduling point of view as to when different functions are available, this table sort of gives you an idea. So right now we're on 20A, which is there in the far right-hand column. So you can see that the 2 options at the bottom of that list is you can edit classic forms, and you can edit and save any processing steps on classic forms as well. What you can't change is what's happening in the front end of the form. Okay. Then just changes to the Marketing Operations Center, and there you'll see that second bullet point, that HTML to go, and in controlled availability. That's the function that I just showed you in order to help you with some dynamic content. Now you may have other applications where being able to export the HTML of an entire email is valuable to you for whatever reason. So that could also be another application. My immediate application will be to help me build better dynamic and shared content. So controlled availability, all that means is you need to log a service request with Oracle through My Oracle Support, talk to your Eloqua administrator, and just ask them to activate HTML to go on your instance. Then we showed you a little bit more detail there with those updates to the Facebook Lead Ads app. DataFox integration is arguably a little bit US-centric, but we're looking at trying to understand the value of that to our clients here within the Asia Pacific region. DataFox is all about account-based marketing, and it's quite a powerful tool. And some of the demos that I've seen of what's happening in the US with that type of information is really quite interesting. It is a paid-for service, so it's not something that we all get, unfortunately. But if there's value there, well, then we try and find the dollars, right? And then some of you may or may not have noticed that the recently accessed by me and recently modified links are now restored to Eloqua. They were taken away and there was too much kerfuffle and noise from the community. And so they've been restored across the different editors. Now, the next release of Eloqua is due in May, in the middle of May, and we expect to show you some pretty exciting things next month that is a little bit of a precursor to what you can see in May. Just in a nutshell, what you're going to be able to do in the email editor is create what we call blocks. So blocks will be pieces that you pre-build that you can drop into landing pages or emails. So for instance, if you think back to my email with that call to action, which was to subscribe, instead of me building that each time or potentially having it sitting in one template, I can actually have a block, and that's apparently the term we'll be using. It'll be a block that is built that I can simply drop in. So just as I would drop in an image and drop in a piece of dynamic content, I can also drop in this thing called a block. More information coming about blocks next month. So I look forward to sharing that with you. That's just to help you understand where your pod exists. So where is your data being stored around the world? And we're at Q&A. So happy to stay online. If you do have some questions, we'd love to answer those questions for you. Of course, you can reach out to myself or to any of the team at Marketing Cube. For our customers, please feel free to contact support@marketingcube.com.au. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a great week. Cheers.